The acrylic nail snapped midair, with a sharp crack that cut through the conference room like a gunshot. Lila Harper, 26 and fresh from her accelerated MBA program, didn't even flinch. She just kept pointing that perfectly manicured hand toward the back of the room where I sat half-hidden behind my laptop.
You.
Fix the Wi-Fi.
Now.
Her voice carried that entitled snap only people born into boardrooms seem to master. I was in the middle of syncing the final failover cluster for the morning's investor presentation, headphones dangling from one ear, when she decided I was the help. The room full of suited investors shifted uncomfortably. I could feel their eyes flicking between us. Lila didn't notice. She spun back to her glitching PowerPoint, the slides flickering like they were mocking her pastel gradients and QR code-heavy onboarding strategy. Tech grandma, she muttered loud enough for everyone to hear. Get it together before we lose these people. My name is Elena Vargas, 48 years old, owner of Vargas Tech Solutions, LLC. For 8 years, I'd been the invisible backbone of Apex Financial Group, a mid-sized investment firm in downtown Chicago that handled over $1 billion in client portfolios. I didn't work for them as an employee. They contracted me through my consultancy. Every VLAN, every redundant server array, every encrypted backup protocol across hybrid AWS and on-prem infrastructure carried my firm's licensing. The CFO himself had signed the original agreement 7 years ago during their first major growth spurt. I saved my work calmly, closed the terminal window, and stood. No raised voice. No argument. Just a single keystroke earlier in the system license manager that flipped every active contract flag to non-renewed. One quiet click. No drama. I unplugged my badge reader, zipped my kit, and walked past her without a word. She stood there, arms crossed, waiting for me to beg or explain. Instead, the elevators began their slow descent into manual mode 12 minutes later. I remember the exact moment the building started to feel it. The soft chirp from the receptionist's monitor. The strange delay when someone tried to badge into the copy room. Then the printers on the second floor began spitting blank pages like ghosts had queued 100 jobs. It wasn't sabotage. It was compliance. The contract clause I'd negotiated years ago, Section 7B, stated clearly, premature termination without written offboarding voids all infrastructure licenses immediately. No exceptions. Lila had strutted into Apex on her third day calling it Modernization Monday. She announced an audit of our tech bloat while I stood behind her fixing a sync issue on the trading cluster. When she asked the room who built this disaster, I raised my hand calmly. That disaster paid your father's bonus 3 years running. She didn't laugh. Just scribbled in her Moleskine notebook like she was preparing a TED Talk on efficiency. Within 48 hours, she'd tried consolidating every credential into a shared Google Sheet. Passwords, root keys, admin tokens, all dumped into color-coded tabs with warnings like, Firewall do not touch. I flagged it immediately, forwarded to legal, IT security, and her father. Her one-line reply, too complex. Not scalable. Scalable. The word still makes me smile bitterly. We weren't running a startup SaaS dashboard. We managed $1.3 billion in active portfolios through a triple redundant hybrid system I designed from a broom closet server room 8 years earlier. I'd migrated everything from consumer-grade junk to enterprise-grade security while she was still choosing college majors. Yet she walked into meetings referring to herself as Ops Lila and questioned why we didn't just move everything to a shared Dropbox to reduce friction. The last straw before the investor meeting had been her suggestion to replace our hardened incident tracker with a Slack channel called Apex Tech Hiccups. When I explained why that was reckless, she went cold. You're not scalable, she whispered as she walked away. That's when I stopped seeing her as a nuisance and started seeing her as a risk. As I stepped into the Chicago afternoon sun that Wednesday, my phone began buzzing with system alerts. Not from her. from the automated dependency checks failing one by one. The receptionist called out behind me, "Elena, are you really leaving?" I turned.
Yes.
But you'll be the first to notice what comes next. By the time the CRM refused to sync, panic rippled across the floor. Junior analysts stared at frozen dashboards. Phones rang unanswered. Calendar invites vanished. The investment team, who usually treated IT issues like someone else's weather problem, finally looked up from their MacBooks. Lila tried to play it cool. "It's probably just a Wi-Fi reset. I'll ping Grandma." She opened Slack. My name no longer appeared. Recent chats empty. Admin directory showed me archived. Deactivated. No forwarding. That's when her chair toppled backward. She tried calling the CTO. No answer. Office phones tied to the VIP system I'd secured behind two-factor and private firewall. The person who managed the keys?
Gone.
The lights dimmed. Not out, but noticeably. HVAC dropped to manual. Smart blinds twitched. Someone tried badging into the executive restroom and got a red light. Then came the panicked murmur of professionals realizing they had no backup plan and no grown-up left in the room.
Bill.
The building manager, ex-military, quiet efficiency, pushed open the stairwell door. "Which one of you just fired the person who owns the infrastructure?" He pointed at the ceiling. "Wi-Fi's out across 4 floors. Half your card readers failed. Guest access line tied into the backbone." His eyes landed on Lila. "You fired Vargas, didn't you?" She stammered something about cooperation. Bill exhaled slowly.
Cool.
"Then you're not renewing your lease." That sentence hung in the air like smoke. Their tenancy agreement depended on consistent uptime and shared infrastructure clauses they'd signed years ago. Violating them by firing me without protocol triggered everything. I didn't pull any plugs. I didn't sabotage. I simply let the contract enforce itself. The machinery ran on an expiring lease they'd just voided. Gravity did the rest. Back when Apex was still a promising boutique firm operating out of a single floor, they brought me in through my consultancy because their nephew's server room was literally a broom closet with a box fan. I rewired everything. Segmented network, cloud-integrated storage, redundancy protocols, hybrid system with enterprise-grade security. They called me Tech Grandma affectionately at first, even though at 48 my posture was better than their ergonomic chairs. The nickname stuck because I was the one who answered when everything failed. Power outage at 2 a.m.? Call Elena. Vendor breach during tax season? Elena fixed it from a coffee shop parking lot. CEO locked out during a merger call? I unbricked his account with 1 bar of signal on a burner laptop. I never signed on as an employee. Everything I built was licensed through Vargas Tech Solutions, LLC. Every VLAN. Automated restore loop. Scheduling software Lila couldn't navigate without calling me twice a week. All my IP. Outlined in the contract the CFO signed. As the firm grew, people stopped seeing the wires. When tech works, it disappears. They brought in strategic hires who animated charts and suggested migrating everything to a singular cloud solution. I smiled, nodded, documented every change, every license key, every access point with MAC filters and dynamic leases. Backups of backups. Encrypted twice over. Stored across 3 zones. Lila arrived glossy-eyed and sharp-tongued on her 3rd day with a soy latte and declared the firewall aggressively inconvenient. She wanted to consolidate admin credentials into a shared Excel sheet so teams could move faster. I laughed, then realized she was serious. "No," I said. She called me, not solution forward. She emailed the CTO accusing me of gatekeeping access and stalling productivity. Never mind that she'd once unplugged a switch to charge her phone and taken down an entire conference room. Or that she spent 45 minutes pitching me on replacing our incident tracker with that Slack channel. I explained politely why you don't replace hardened infrastructure with a free-tier messaging app. She got quiet, then whispered, "You're not scalable." That night, I poured a bourbon and pulled up the original vendor agreement. 7 years old. Ironclad. Section 7B. Premature termination without written offboarding renders all infrastructure licenses void and non-transferable. Immediate revocation applies. I'd added that clause after a previous exec tried to stiff me on payment. Legal had let it slide because nobody expects to fire the person who built the invisible pipes. Lila had no clue. She thought systems were magic. Wi-Fi just works. Backups just happen. Dashboards never lie. But someone maintains the dark corners of the server stack. That someone was me. And I confirmed in legally binding ink that one impulsive snap would unravel more than her slideshow. In the investor meeting, her screen flatlined. She snapped those fingers again. "Fix the Wi-Fi." I asked for 5 minutes. She hissed, "You're done." Effective immediately. The room went still. One investor's face flashed horror. He'd lived through a data breach before. I stood slowly, tucked my chair in, closed my terminal, but not before that one quiet keystroke. Admin non-renewed. To anyone who's built layered infrastructure, that's removing the final beam from a tower balanced on toothpicks. I walked past her without eye contact. She fumbled her next slide because it pulled real-time data from a private server no longer validating her credentials. Downstairs, I handed my badge to the receptionist. Sarah always brought donuts on Thursdays. She looked stunned. "You'll be the first to notice what comes next," I told her. The cascade started softly. Reception monitor chirped. Elevator panel delayed. Printers spit blanks. 12 minutes later, the second floor felt the full weight. CRM refused to sync. Asset archive inaccessible. Automated trade queues dumped out of sync. Backup servers showed warnings. Lila brushed it off.
Just a reset.
"I'll ping Grandma." But my name was gone from Slack. Admin directory archived. CTO unreachable because office phones were secured behind systems only I managed. Lights dimmed. HVAC manual. Badge readers failing. The murmur grew into quiet panic. Bill arrived. "You fired the person who owns the infrastructure." He pointed at Lila. "You're not renewing your lease." The realization hit them. The person they'd treated like help desk was the reason the lights stayed on. The CTO bolted to the server room. Main admin console locked him out. Credentials demoted. Cloud portal showed license expiration initiated by Vargas Tech Solutions LLC at 9:43 a.m. Legacy dashboard inaccessible. Recovery partition removed years ago after ransomware scare. BIOS password randomized offline. They pulled the original contract. Someone read Clause 7B aloud like discovering revelations. Termination without offboarding voids all licenses. Support ceases immediately. Access reverts to vendor. Lila stood in the corner trying to look invisible. Her father, the CFO, hand trembling on his phone. I didn't answer his calls. The quiet spread, not calm, but the kind when adults realize they've broken something fundamental. Legal assistant Marissa whispered, "Did we complete the offboarding checklist?" Silence.
No.
Panic seeped behind glass walls. PowerPoint heroes realizing the system they thought they owned never belonged to them. They'd fired their lifeline. By Thursday morning, the office had the energy of a sinking yacht. Investors backed out of the salvaged pitch call. Lila tried on borrowed laptop and coffee shop Wi-Fi. Compliance, servers unreachable. Sandbox environment collapsed. Trading algorithm I'd personally containerized went cold. Legal escalated to external counsel, who flagged Clause 7B in screaming red. The same clause I'd negotiated over 4 months when onboarding. Premature termination voids support and licensing immediately. Non-negotiable. They requested my cooperation. But they hadn't completed a single off-boarding item, no data handover, no credential sign-out, no license review. Just deleted me from Slack like that equaled severance. Lila had never read the contract. She'd skimmed it like a takeout menu and asked an intern for the TLDR. Now she stood before her father trying to explain how some IT lady had unplugged half their operations without touching a cable. The CFO called twice. I let them ring. His email, urgent, seeking collaboration. Nothing unclear about what happened. They'd terminated the architect without protocol. The system obeyed its design. Revoked. Locked. Sealed. No malice. Just compliance. HR panicked about insurance exposure. SLA breaches meant thousands in fees. Their boutique image, heritage building, white glove service, cracking under one unchecked ego. I'd built guardrails. They'd walked off the bridge anyway. Friday morning, full bunker mode. Marketing tried spinning the outage as scheduled refresh in a client blast but misspelled it and CC'd investors. Board restless. Team tethering personal phones. Guessing domain access. I sent the email. Subject: Service termination invoice, contract breach penalty. 7-page PDF. Body: Restoration contingent upon full payment and written acknowledgement of breach. Invoice valid 72 hours. Total $185,000. Generous: $140,000 premature voiding. $30,000 proprietary buyout. $15,000 expedited reissuance. Legal received at 9:12. Read receipt at 9:17. CFO read at 9:24. CEO follow-up at 9:35, seeking clarification on terms. They didn't need clarification. They needed funds. Lila insisted it was overreaching.
Punitive.
But I wasn't an employee. I was the vendor with enforceable contracts, time-stamped trails, legal standing to shut off access the moment protocol violated. CTO tried counterproposal. Legal shut it down. Risk of discovery exposing the real story. At 10:12 voicemail from external counsel. 11:05 formal acknowledgement signed by CEO with wire confirmation. Full amount. No red lines. I replied once. Access keys via secure courier within 24 hours. No future support or liability assumed past delivery. They asked for a discussion. I agreed. Not because I owed them. I wanted to watch the panic up close. The top floor meeting. Ceilings higher. Silence more expensive. I arrived 5 minutes early. Canvas folder underarm. CEO there in person. $2,000 watch glinting. No one else spoke. Not legal. Not HR. Not Lila, she wasn't invited. Before his scripted speech, I placed 2 papers. Final invoice marked due upon receipt. And formal statement of infrastructure detachment, waiver of future support or liability. No support. No maintenance. No guarantees, I said plainly. If paid today, I'll restore access once. He nodded. No posturing. Just resignation. He excused himself. Returned with printed wire confirmation.
Cleared.
Time-stamped. No deductions. I slid the sealed envelope. Restoration protocols. Key string. Single-use token to decrypt firewall logs. Expires after use. I made them sign receipt of understanding. Everything logged. I stood to leave. No handshake. As I reached the door, the CEO asked quietly, was she ever going to understand what she did? I paused.
No.
But you should have. Then I left. By the time I reached the street, their systems crawled back online. Lights flickered. Security doors clicked. The illusion of control returned just enough for the next board meeting. But they'd remember. That afternoon, Bill made his final appearance. Clipboard in hand.
Come.
He stopped short of the glass conference room where Lila pretended to reorganize the calendar. "You fired the person who owned the backbone," he said flatly. "Expected us to keep pretending that wouldn't affect our partnership?" She stammered about corrective measures. Bill didn't flinch.
Cool.
"Then you're not renewing your lease." Their occupancy agreement tied to uptime clauses. They'd violated everyone. By month's end, HR circulated relocation notices. By quarters, and the floor vacated. Tables left behind like ashamed witnesses. I walked past the building a week later. Real estate banner. Premium office space available. Fully wired. Move-in ready. Technically true, I'd wired it. Not for them. My phone rang for days. 2 investors from that meeting contacted me directly. Separate firms. Wanted discrete infrastructure work. One said, "You handled that with surgical precision." I told the truth. I just followed the contract. New clients. Better money. No fragile egos with Wi-Fi entitlement. Lila ended up doing strategy advisory for a startup her father quietly funded to keep her out of sight. She posts LinkedIn quotes about resilience and growth from failure.
I don't comment.
The firm that once called me tech grandma didn't just fire their technician. They fired their foundation. Looking back, the most haunting part wasn't the chaos or the payout. It was how quickly the illusion shattered. People assume technology is magic until the magician walks away. Lila thought respect came from titles and family connections. She never understood it must be earned by those who keep the invisible systems running. I built more than networks. I built reliability in a world that takes it for granted. The contract wasn't revenge. It was protection I'd learned to write after years of being overlooked. The clause protected my work, my firm, my livelihood. In the end, Apex paid. They restored access once. But the trust was gone. The lease non-renewal forced relocation. Investors remembered the outage during due diligence. Reputation damage lingered longer than any technical fix. For me, it opened doors. The investors who witnessed the fallout became clients who valued expertise over flash. They understood the cost of arrogance. Lila's journey? Her LinkedIn posts suggest she's learning resilience. But true growth requires acknowledging the overlooked people who make your world function. Her father, the CFO, carries the heavier weight. He signed the contract years ago and failed to protect the foundation when it mattered. The moral question lingers. How often do we snap our fingers at the people holding the keys? In offices across America, behind every seamless dashboard and reliable connection, there's someone like me documenting, maintaining, protecting. We become invisible when things work. But cross the line, ignore the protocol, treat expertise as disposable, and the system enforces its own justice. I don't regret the keystroke. I regret that it took such a public unraveling for them to see the wires. Respect isn't given because someone demands it. It's earned by those who build what others can't see. And foundations, once shaken, reveal exactly who was holding them up all along.